Well, welcome to the Longhouse. This is a very sacred place for us, and the Longhouses always were very sacred places. These always were winter village sites for tribal people. This is a post and beam structure, but you also find the posts along the wall that were the same thing that they used to use to tie the wall up with. We have an incredibly marvelous floor. This floor is the design by Mary Lou, who's the basket maker that you saw some of her baskets of earlier. The design is laid out in 3 different kinds of wood: Douglas fir, hemlock, and cedar. All very important to us. And the design itself has 2 mountain ranges on either side and then a star in the middle. It signifies the tribe. We are between 2 mountain ranges, the Olympics and the Cascades. We are the people of the inside. The floor tells that story.
This is what we've been trying to do. We're trying to build a longhouse, our first home since 1894, to have a place in the community, to let everybody know that we do have a history. These are Chief Seattle's people, and they even named a city from our chief. So, and as I say, we're still here, and now we have a home. This gets very emotional for me because it's tough to realize that we've been treated so badly, and but we're persistent to change what has happened to this tribe. If you don't fight for your rights, you might as well just go home and have tea.
To the east of us is Snoqualmie. To the south of us is Puyallup. To the west of us is Suquamish. And to the north of us is Snohomish. And you'll find all of our village sites in here, even into Vashon Island, basically western King County.
Well, the Duwamish Tribe believes with new administration, the doors are going to open for Native Americans, especially for restoration of treaty rights. Under the previous administration, in 2001, we had worked over almost 20 years on recognition, and when the new administration came in 2001, they took away our status. They gave it was given by the Clinton administration, and then 48 hours after the new administration came in, which was the Bush administration, it was put on hold and it was taken away.
And it's almost doubly hard to take, that you had something once in a treaty and never fulfilled, and then given it again and having it taken back. There's an old term, it's called Indian giver, and that's where those type of terms come from. It is not Indian giving, it is how people give to Indians. Indian giver, that's what that means.
Let's go back to Governor Stevens. Governor Stevens was told to come out here and to bring settlers out here. But to bring settlers out from the East Coast, he was directed, I guess, by the president to sign treaties with the Native Americans or the Indians, the pioneers. So when he came out here to Puget Sound, one of the treaties was Point Elliott. The Duwamish Tribe was the first signature of this treaty, which we gave up 54,000 acres, which is Seattle. They said we would have education, we would get housing, we would get money, and they would pay, hopefully, for the longhouses that they burned down. And we signed the treaty in 1855. I think it was in January, by our chief, Chief Sealth and his sub-chiefs. And we languished in nothing, and we didn't get anything. And when we sued, and then we followed suit once, and they threw it out. And then they sued it, and that suit languished in court for 40 years, which they settled in 1960. And then they had to decide who are the Duwamish people. So from the middle of 1960 to 1971, they got the roles of who determined who wanted to be Duwamish, and they settled with the tribe, and of course they paid off the attorney, which was little or nothing. And each member who was determined to be Duwamish got $64 for the city of Seattle.
Dispossession talks to the treaty, the moving of Duwamish people, the trying to push us out of this area. The importance for us for the treaty is to make sure that people understand that the Duwamish tribe is a treaty signing tribe. Quite honestly, the first tribe, the signature on the Point Elliott Treaty is the Duwamish tribe. So it is not like we do not have the treaty backing us and all of the other things backing who we are. We do, and we try to show that here. And also showing kind of the change in the more migrant status of Native people, living in tents instead of living in longhouses, how they traditionally lived. And so this is at the end of Bell Street, I believe, after their longhouses were burned. They didn't have much choice, so they had to live somehow, someplace. And Indian people, Duwamish people, kept coming back to this place. They were pushed out and they'd come back, and pushed out and come back.
We had to get in the process of acknowledgement, which started out officially in 1978. So from 1978 up to 2001, we felt that we had proven our case, which is we are the indigenous people of Seattle. They determined, well, you know, they signed a treaty, but they were supposed to go to reservations and they didn't go. Well, our people especially lived along the rivers in Puget Sound here and the lakes, and they were just fine. But the pioneers didn't want them, so they pushed them out and made them go and burned down their house, and there was a little prejudice there existing between the pioneers, but they were good for cheap labor, though. I mean, they were needed, but once the work was over, they had to get out of town.
You have to remember that in the 60s and prior to, quite honestly, there was no rights to speak of for Indian people. Treaty rights were something that were not even thought of. And in the 60s, with younger people coming into tribes, not just here, but across the country, people started thinking about, wait a second, we have a treaty, what does that treaty actually mean? Reading that treaty and understanding what that treaty means. And so in the 60s you had a struggle in this part of the country about fishing, because what was in the treaty said that Native people and everyone else, we had in-kind fishing rights. Well, the judge finally decided what that means. In-kind means half. And that was a huge decision, a valuable decision for Native people, and it was something that really changed the landscape as far as Native people. When we talk about then, we're talking about the 1970s, late 60s and early 70s. And all of a sudden there was a viable resource, because salmon were, you could make money fishing. It's not as easy anymore as it was then, because salmon, relative to a price and per pound, is not as expensive now as it was then. So with that came a strive for other rights, and the Duwamish tribe, being a tribe that has been since the turn of the century dealing with treaty issues, we're the first tribe to actually go after the money that was promised to us in 1855. The Court of Claims case was led by the Duwamish tribe, and our attorneys went all the way through Puget Sound talking to other tribes about your part of the Point Elliott Treaty. And in that Point Elliott Treaty it says you were supposed to be paid for your lands, and you ask them the question, have you been paid for your lands? And no, they hadn't. And this it starts in the 1920s, continues into the 30s, 40s, 50s. Finally, in 1962, the United States Court of Claims basically said, yes, we should pay you. Now, what we got was the value of the land in 1855. No interest paid, nothing about all of our longhouses that were destroyed, nothing for all the other things that were gone, but just the price of the land in 1855. I think Cecile talks about it as I went out and bought groceries, because that's just about as much as it was, the money that we got. But the point is that we did get something. We won that battle. And when we talk about federal recognition, it is a series of battles, a long battle. And it's also about, quite honestly, the law of the land. The treaty is ratified by Congress, is the law of the land. One of the promises that were made to Duwamish people and Indian people throughout this country is that we are a people that live by laws, and that those laws govern us, join us, so that you will be part of this society, that these laws will affect you as well. And, well, they really didn't have much choice. But they did, and they signed those treaties with those promises. Well, those promises have not been fulfilled. And that is where we are today, is trying to get a promise fulfilled. And it's much more than just a promise. This is a document that was signed by a governor, ratified by Congress. You would think that that would hold some weight. Well, this is a welcome figure. That's an important thing to have at the entrance of a longhouse. And Michael had just carved this piece, less than a year ago. And it's called Keeper of the Song. And you'll find dots all over this piece, all signifying songs, especially around his head. And the one thing that's very interesting about this welcome figure, it is not just a front welcome figure, but around back you'll also find the designs on the back as well. So it's important to be able to display the piece so that you can see both sides of the piece. Usually a welcome figure stands against a wall and welcomes you like that. And this figure is actually something that's a very special figure carved by Michael. And Michael's a Duwamish carver. His mother's Mary Lou Slaughter, and she's also has her baskets here for the opening of the longhouse. And that's the first thing that you see, the first people of Seattle. It's a very important statement. It's something that's very important to say to people as they walk in here. One of the things that Cecile has said over the years, and we've all talked about over the years, that we are still here. And because a lot of people forget that, or choose to forget that, or never knew that in the first place. So it's important that this place become a place where we can, almost like something to stand on top of and shout from, that we are still here. And this welcomes you. I mean, it's an important thing for us. Everybody is welcome, and descendants of Chief Seattle, leader, revered throughout the world as Chief Seattle. We're the first people of Seattle, Mercer Island, Renton, Bellevue, Kirkland, Tukwila, and other parts of King County. We have never left our ancestral homeland. Real strong statements. And we carry the strengths of our cultures, teachings, and traditions into the 21st century. And that kind of sets you up for what you're going to see next. The other panels that talk about the Duwamish today, the struggles during treaty times, and then more traditions as far as the tribe is concerned, and then a real specific thing about the maps, where and who, where we are, where the old village sites were, and that type of thing. This is how our people traveled. We are a canoe culture. That is who we are. In the plains, you have people that have horse cultures, which is fairly recent for them in their history, but still they have horse cultures. We are canoe cultures. Canoe is a very important part of everything that the tribe used to do, and we're getting back to those things more and more and more. Now, we have an archaeological site, which we actually have some of the pieces on exhibit here. And some of the dating in that archaeological site, right across the street over here, goes back to 300 BC. So, and these are not extensive excavations. These were done over a couple of years, painstakingly done as they're done, but there is still stuff left in the ground over there, and we know that. And so the important thing about that is that one of the things that my mother used to talk about is when the Egyptians were building pyramids, Duwamish people were here. The contemporary part of the exhibit over here, we're getting ready for Mary Lou's show, and this is some of her basket work. She's a master basket maker, and I'm really proud to have her as our first artist that we show in our gallery, part of the thing. So you see all the baskets laid out. That's what we're kind of doing. I'm kind of just going through and got to look at them and figure out where's the best place to put some of these things. These represent not only traditional design, but how they're made, traditionally, from traditional things. You will find this, and as we go through the exhibits, you will find old baskets that are almost identical to the ones that she's made. So yes, they're traditional in a lot of different ways. Every basket maker is going to make a basket slightly different than another one. In other words, I think you find that in New Mexico with very popular pottery that comes from tribes in the Southwest, that, you know, there'll be traditional designs, but no two design is going to be the same. The real tight woven baskets, and I don't think Mary Lou brought any of those with her today, but the real tight woven, and we have one old one, are cooking baskets. And no, they didn't go on top of a fire or anything like that. What happened, the way our people used to cook in baskets were that they were very tightly woven baskets, and so that they would actually hold water. And then you would put in what you're cooking, and then the heated rocks from the fire would go into the baskets, and that's what cooked your food. And obviously, other things were cooked on the fire as well, but cooking in baskets were something that our people have been doing for thousands of years.
And these more loosely woven baskets?
Gathering baskets, and a lot of them used to gather clams. Obviously, if you have a clam, you don't want to have a lot of stuff stay in the basket. So, and especially when you want to wash your clams out, it's much easier with a very loosely woven basket to be able then to wash the clams out in the water and get as much of the sand out of them as you possibly can. Practical. Chairperson here is a very important person. She's been our chairperson for over 30 years now. And it's not unusual within the tribe to have a chairperson for a very long period of time. And she established Duwamish Tribal Services, which is the nonprofit arm of the Duwamish Tribe, enabling us to get grants from the federal government. It was something that was very important to us in a time when we were kind of struggling. And she came in with very strong leadership and has been so ever since. One of the things about this, it shows Duwamish today. It shows our dance group, some of our Mary Lou and Michael, as some of our artists that we have, some of our children, an annual meeting that we had, and a canoe gathering that happened not too long ago, about 2002, that actually happened across the street over here as well. And this important part about this is that it takes a chiefdom starting in 1840 with Seattle. And as you see the dates, there is no break. What happens is that you have from 1896 to 1925, 2 chiefs. And then we go in from 1915 to 1947 with a chairperson. In other words, the change from the chiefdom to Robert's Rules of Order, Constitution, and those things. And we're probably the first tribe in Western Washington to have a modern constitution in 1925. And there's no break to Cecile Hansen today. These talk about the struggle of the tribe. Talking about one of our chiefs, Chief Henry Moses from Renton. Very important. He was basically named Moses by people who knew him, settlers that knew him, because his people were struggling. And so they gave him the title of Moses, as the story out of the Bible. And you find other pictures of different ways that people survived, and an important photograph of a high-stakes gambling game, one of the last ones to happen in Renton, and actually was written up in their newspaper in Renton, of this terrible noise that was coming from the north part of, or by Lake Washington for days and days, which was a sing gamble that went on in Renton. And it was one of the last ones that happened. It was hosted by the Snoqualmies and by Duwamish. But to have a photograph from that is very valuable to us. This is Princess Angeline. Princess Angeline is incredibly important to Duwamish people. She was the daughter of Chief Seattle, the namesake of the city of Seattle. And the important thing about Angeline was that even though she had the opportunity to go anywhere she really wished to, being a high-born Duwamish person and a high-born Native person in Puget Sound, she chose to live here. She did not leave Seattle. She's buried here in Seattle, right next to Henry Esler and all the important pioneers in the very ritzy graveyard up on Queen Anne Hill. And this is a very human type picture of her. This is on her, by her house, which was just below Pike Place Market, and with her dog posing rather nicely for you right there. And it's again a wonder to still have these type of things of these people, having that kind of a picture, and the idea of a high-profile woman during the turn of the century that refused to leave here, even though there was a lot of persecution, even though she was honored by a lot of people. She was also harassed a lot by tons of people, and she did not deter her. She did not leave. And why? It's because this is her home. And these panels, and this one in particular, talks to traditions, the traditions of the Duwamish tribe. They talk about Chief Seattle once again. We talk about how we used to fish. Nets is not something that we used, but fish weirs were something that were used. They were very important to us. Again, the canoe, how we traveled, and also longhouses. And one of the things that's important about looking at this is a picture of a village site here. And in the village site you will find, this is actually a post and beam structure still, but then you'll also find on the outside these things that are not really holding up the roof. You'll find the same thing on the outside of our longhouse. What they did was, that was how they lashed the cedar panels, or the cedar planks, to the wood. That held the wood on the side of the house. And then a post and beam structure to hold up the roof. And that's exactly what the longhouse is. So our hope, I mean, I'm just like the rest of the country. Everybody's been swept up in hope and how do we live to the best of ourselves? Who are we? How can we make this world a better place? How can we make just our little corner of the world a better place? And one of the things that I think we can quite honestly say, that with the advent of the Longhouse and Cultural Center, that it will make the city of Seattle, the Northwest, a much richer place. To know a history of this area, to know a history of this city that most people don't know of. If you move into an old house, and a city is like an old house, it's important to know the history of that house. It's important to know who's lived there before, what's happened in this house. And one of the things that we want to do here at the Longhouse and Cultural Center is to tell people the history of our home. You've moved in. We're still in a small little corner here, but we've kind of put up a little more of a little corner, and we want people to understand what that means to us and what it should mean to you. History in this area did not start when the first settlers came here. There's a rich and valuable history that goes on for thousands of years. And that's what we want to be able to show. And to show the breadth and width of Native entertainment, Native speakers, film work, highlighting Native people, struggles of Native people, and triumphs of Native people as well. This is what this place is going to be about. It's going to be about something that is kind of like Town Hall is to a lot of people in the city of Seattle. It's a wonderful place. They have lots of incredible variety of entertainment. Well, this is going to be like a Native town hall. This is a place where, and that's exactly what it is. A longhouse is a town hall in definition. So having a place where people can come and really be entertained, if that's all you want to get out of it, but you're going to learn something if you come here. And hopefully you'll also catch a very warm and welcoming feeling when you're here, because that's really who we are. There have been a lot of people that said our downfall is our generosity, because we're the ones that welcomed the settlers and helped them to survive. And some people have noticed that maybe that wasn't the smartest decision in the world to make. But despite that, we are still a very generous people. And now that the place is here, now giving can begin.